When I went on my podcast app the other day and checked Jordan Peterson's latest episode, I was actually really surprised when he had the likes of none other than Sam Harris, once former rivals. Now they've reconciled, as it would seem, over this shared woke right nonsense. What's going on in the right? You have a lot of people such as Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson. I call them the bad faith individuals that seem to think that they know what they're talking about. They create a lot of fear mongering, you name it. They're really just spouting a certain amount of information that is feeding a lot of crazy, vulnerable minds false information. Now, if you don't know who Sam Harris is, he is the host of the Making Sense podcast. He is a neuroscientist as well as an author. He's a philosopher as well. I disagree with a number of things that Sam Harris talks about, namely religion as well, and also his complete and utter disdain for Trump. Interesting how he's got a complete and utter disdain for Trump when part of his subject matters that he talks about is rationality, which is Steven Pinker's work as well. He also talks about free will, determinism, neuroscience, meditation, psychedelics, philosophy of mind, politics, T-rism, and artificial intelligence, among many, many other topics, which you guys can go and check him out if you haven't already. He's been in the news a number of times with, going viral for saying things that, he became very controversial on the right and on the left for like a number of years ago, whereby he actually dissociated from social media altogether, went off grid. I can't exactly recall what it was about or what he said, but I know a number of people remember. But still, he's come back and people still regard him as an important voice, I guess you could say, in this space. And it's quite interesting that you've got Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, who were once rivals or foes, as it were. I mean, you can check out the major debate that they had about the existence of God and religion and all sorts of other things that came about because of it. And now they've come together over the support for Israel. So we had Tucker Carlson recently interview the president of Iran, which was 28 minutes of pure nonsense, and Tucker not even pushing back, even though Tucker claims to be America first. And I get it, you've only got 28 minutes, but still, man, if you claim to be America first and the guy is like deflecting over chanting death to America and saying that it's something that you don't think it actually is, it's something completely different. If you are claiming that you're America first, man, you actually push back. You don't let the guy get away with it. Honestly, just the guy's on Zoom. He's not like you're in front of him. It's not like he can do anything. I know you've got 28 minutes, and maybe part of the thing was you're not allowed to push back. You just let him say whatever he wants and just publish it anyway. But I think that is wrong. Just because you got an interview with somebody doesn't mean that you go against your morals and your values to suit that of a guest on your show, man. Like, the guest on your show is a guest. So therefore, it's your show. You run it how you see fit, not by what the guest says. Doesn't matter who the hell it is. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on the matter. But nevertheless, Tucker Carlson has gone down a very, very interesting path, as it were. It seems like he has been paid off by the likes of Qatar, because Qatar millionaires or Qatar business people actually helped fund his media company, I believe it is. And it seems as if Tucker now is going completely against Israel. He's going completely against Trump. He claims to be anti-war, but then the only way to fix everything is actually to go to war in some regards. It's kind of like me trying to make sense of Tucker Carlson, but yet trying to make sense of him actually breaks my brain a little bit because he doesn't make too much sense. He's very contradictory in his speech. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but I certainly have, and even Sam Harris has noticed it too. So Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris sat down together recently, and they criticized Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan in the latest conversation they had together over what they've been talking about recently with this vehement blanket Israel is hateful, Israel is the worst, you name it. So have a watch of what Sam Harris had to say about this, about Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan?
Well, I could say the same thing about Tucker Carlson, right? And you might, whether you agree with me or not, this is my view of him, that he's not in the truth-seeking journalistic integrity business. He's got some other political project that entails spreading a fair amount of misinformation quite cynically and consciously, and smearing lots of people. And in the case of, I don't know how deep his anti-Semitism runs, but in the case of that particular topic, midwifing a very misleading conversation with an amateur historian who he considers the greatest historian working in America today, Daryl Cooper, the podcaster. And the opinion expressed, again, this is at the highest possible level in our information ecosystem. It's the largest audience. Few historians in human history have ever had a bigger audience than Daryl Cooper had on Tucker's podcast, and then quickly followed by his appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? And on that podcast, he spread the lie, the recycled, David Irving point that the Holocaust was not at all what it seemed, and you wouldn't believe it, but the Nazis really never intended to kill the Jews. They just rounded up so many prisoners in their concentration camps and found that they just didn't have enough food during winter to feed them, and they just were put in this just impossible situation. And might it not seem more compassionate to euthanize these starving prisoners in the end, right? I mean, that's how they accidentally stumbled into the final solution, right? That's what he spread, again, to the largest possible audience. And in Tucker's case, you had a very, I would say, sinister midwifing of that conversation. In Joe's case, he just doesn't know when he's in the presence of recycled David Irving, and is just happy to have a conversation with a podcaster of whom he's a great fan. And but yet he's still culpable for not having done enough homework to adequately push back about what's being said to his audience, which is the largest podcast audience on earth. So it's journalistically, and I know Joe doesn't consider himself a journalist. He considers himself a comedian who's just having fun conversations. Great. But what that is tantamount to at this moment, especially in the context of the worst eruption of anti-Semitism we've ever seen in our lifetimes globally, that's tantamount to taking absolutely no responsibility for the kind of information that is flowing unrebutted into the ears of your audience, right? That's why I got angry at Joe, right? I mean, I love Joe. Joe is a great person. He's completely in over his head on topics of that sort, and it has a consequence. It has an effect.
Tucker and Joe, they both have these guests on, right? So Tucker had Daryl Cooper on, and then Joe Rogan had Daryl Cooper on, and Daryl has a podcast of his own, and Marta made, and he has been shouting from the rooftops for quite some time. He's been anti-Churchill, pro-Hitler, as it would seem, very anti-Semitic too, and trying to change the narrative of World War II, the revisionist history kind of narrative, which is quite dangerous. We have history for a reason, right? We should not, especially if it's modern history and we actually have accurate sources to go by, we shouldn't listen to people that have a revisionist history and try to change what historical sources have to say, accurate accounts. We have all this. We shouldn't be listening to people nowadays that are trying to go against Churchill, trying to say that the Nazis were in fact good, or even Hitler was good, because that's not true one bit. In fact, the whole narrative now is shifted quite considerably to now, podcasters won't even push back because they don't know Jack. They don't know the history. Tucker should have known. He did more pushing back on a senator of the United States than he did with Daryl Cooper or even the president of Iran. That's nuts to me. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, he won't push back much unless he knows anything about it. Doesn't seem like Joe Rogan knows too much about history, as it would seem. He knows a lot about other things, and you can possibly see him push back on other things, like COVID, for example. But when it comes down to history, you won't really see many people push back on it. And that is disingenuous. That is Sam Harris is basically echoing exactly what Douglas Murray was talking about. You have this incredible platform, but yet you're using it to change a narrative in a very nefarious way. And that is wrong. We shouldn't be giving these people a huge audience to spread their lies. And we can prove that they are actually lies, because vulnerable minds will then go, oh, this is actually true. I am going to share this even more. And so history then becomes tainted. It becomes tainted by these false historians, pseudo-historians, that they want to call themselves that. It's wrong. And again, Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson have every right, as the intellectual bodies that they are, to call these men out and say, what in the world are you trying to do? This is more than just you sitting down having a conversation. This seems planned. You have Tucker Carlson, for example, that seems to be more kind to the enemy guests rather than the American, like, senators. You saw the interview he did with Ted Cruz. You saw how he treated an American patriot, an American senator for conservatism, but he won't treat Darryl Cooper like that. He won't treat any of his other guests like that. If Tucker doesn't like you, he'll make it known. It's clear. If he does like you, he'll give you the softest interview of your entire bloody life. And that goes for Joe Rogan as well. And these are people that I used to listen to all the time, but I've watched them change. I've watched them change, and not for the better. Now, the good thing is Jordan Peterson has been very consistent. And so has, in some ways, Sam Harris. He's been very consistent on his stances. I've been very consistent on my stances too. You can always tell if a person has been very consistent with what they have to say, fantastic. But if there is a sudden change, you've got to question, why has there been all of a sudden this sudden change, especially after the comeback from Qatar? And why in the world are so many people listening to comedians for their main source of information? Gee, I don't know. That seems very interesting to me, doesn't it? That's why I trust people like Douglas Murray, Jordan Peterson, sometimes Sam Harris, a number of other people that know what they're talking about. Anyway, that's enough from me, but you guys take care, be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.